Hey everybody, Eric Dorward here with Spartan Rocketry Club for completing our build of the Estes Viking. Now you'll notice since last time, I've actually gone and painted this. I wish I could show you how to do that because it's probably for this one, at least the second hardest thing you're going to have to do. Hopefully you have some spray paint available. We really don't want to brush these because it'll take forever for one thing, but whoops. But it also gives you a better coat, better, smoother finish, more aerodynamic if you spray paint it. I've primed it, so I used a can of white primer on the bottom to get rid of the lines that we drew, mostly. That didn't work super well. And then I separated the two parts. So the nose cone, I really shouldn't have painted all of it green. In the future, I would put a cuff of tape around the top, but I was kind of lazy, and it's fine. So this got painted green. The rest of the rocket body got painted yellow. Yellow is a particularly annoying color to paint with because the paint, in my experience, doesn't matter what brand, it never seems to cover very well. So it took me 3 coats to get to this color, and there were still some lines bleeding through the primer coat. And if you look really hard, you could probably see them, but they're basically covered up by now. At this point, we need to attach the recovery system, and we need to put the decals on. Let's do the recovery system first. Now, you will actually need the instructions, not to read, but you'll notice, there we go, down here, there's a little template. We've used these before. We need to cut it out, and then we're going to glue it. So let me grab my scissors. I'm going to cut this out, and I will be back momentarily. Okay, so I've cut out our little template here. Turn it the other way. Get everything else out of the way. Hopefully you've done this before. If not, it's not particularly complicated. I've managed to make a mess with the glue already. We are not going to cut this apart, so make sure you just cut the shape out. We're going to put glue in the sector that says 2. Now, I made a mess opening the glue bottle, so I would actually spray it under normal circumstances. Lay your band down in the middle, and then fold over section 1 till you get to the section, the divider there between section 1 and section 2. And then we're going to put a little bit more glue in section 3 here. You do not need much for this. In fact, that is probably way more than we possibly need. Fold over again. And see, it's squirting out the sides. Good hint that you're using too much. Squeeze it tight and hang on to it for a moment. I'm actually going to kind of clean up my gluey mess here because we really do not need anywhere near as much glue as I got coming out. Holding it together. You do not need this to actually fully dry, and in fact it would be annoying if you did, because then the paper would get crunchy and it wouldn't be soft and pliable like we'd like the paper to be. So I got the glue off my hands because my rocket is essentially finished and I really don't want to get any glue on it at this point, on the outside anyway. We're going to put a little bit more glue onto our attachment here for the shock cord. There, that's probably more than enough. I'm going to spread it out with my finger. Wipe off my finger so I'm sure that I don't, and there's some glue on that one, don't want that. Okay, now that we've got our gluey side, we are going to stick it into the rocket body. Now, the small rockets like this is going to be difficult. My finger barely fits, so, or my index finger anyway, so I'm going to use one of my smaller fingers. I'm going to kind of curl up like this, our attachment, put it in there, and I'm going to use my little finger to push it down this time. I'm going to get this at least, the instructions say, basically put it as far in as you can. I can get to basically a knuckle and a half. So that's as far as it's going to get. I'm going to push down the piece of paper against the rocket tube. Not super hard, like I'm going to damage the thing, but hard enough so that it's flat. Because the last thing we want is to have that mount not be flat inside. And looking inside, not sure if you can see, it probably helps if I orient it the right way, which I'm not doing. There, it's pretty, oh, there we go. It's pretty flat, so that'll do. It's also far enough. It definitely needs to be far enough so the shoulder here on the nose cone can fit in without bumping into it. And so that's great. We're good. We do not need our glue anymore, so I'm going to clean up my glue mess here. And now we're going to attach the recovery system. Previously, we'd used a parachute, which is more complicated. This rocket is so light that instead of a parachute, we have a streamer. First off, though, I think I'm actually going to attach the shock cord here to the nose cone. This is a very common procedure. It's the same pretty much for every rocket. Tie yourself a few knots, thread the cord through the hook, the eyelet there, and I'm going to just tie very basic knots a couple times. Should hold it. We want to have as little, excess shock cord on this side as possible. And in fact, I'm going to snip this off because this extra bit can get caught when we're trying to package the rocket, pack it up for flight. Now, the instructions tell us that we're going to take our shock cord, and they recommend that we attach it approximately 2 inches from the nose cone with just plain old tape. Well, we could certainly do that. We don't really need to measure this. So approximately here. I'm actually going to put a couple of pieces of tape down to kind of hold it together better. So one piece just to kind of hold the initial taping down. And then I'm going to fold over this extra bit here, like so. And I'm going to tape that down as well. There. That way, the tape is holding both the shock cord and the streamer itself in a couple places. This thing, streamers, yeah. There are certainly competitive people who fold streamers. They wouldn't use one like this that's made out of this like plastic cloth. They'd use mylar ones or paper ones that you can fold up very tightly. We don't really care all that much. We're not going for world records or anything. So in order to get it packaged up in into the rocket body, we're just going to fold it into thirds or approximate thirds, just so we don't have too much. And then we're going to roll it up. We don't have to roll it super well. All we're doing, I mean, for now, we're just trying to get it in the rocket body so it's all packaged away, so we don't have a rocket dangling apart. But for when we fly it, this is basically the same thing. You're going to roll it up about as tightly as you can manage. It doesn't need to be absolutely compact. It just needs to fit in the rocket body. So in it goes. That fits fine. Of course, when we're actually flying this, we would put wadding in or dog barf. Probably wadding for this because it's such a small diameter. And then we'll just make sure we get all the elastic cord in there. Recovery system is done. Last thing, at least I'm going to show you, is dealing with these decals. These decals down here, they are all stickers, but I had to cut them out, which is unusual for stickers. Usually you just peel them off, but these had to be cut out. They're all on one sheet, and they're all separated by little black lines, which is a pain, frankly. It would be much nicer if they're all pre-cut, but they're not, so you're going to have to cut them yourself. I use scissors because I think your average person is better dealing with scissors than with a knife, but you could certainly use an X-Acto knife to cut these out as well. And do be careful. I was careful with these to make sure I was cutting inside the black lines so there aren't any black dots on the outside, because we will see them and we really don't want to. So let's start applying them. Where do they go? Well, the instructions actually show a little picture. A little picture here. That's about as good as it's going to get unless you want to look at the big box that came with this set. If you bought this individually, you'd have a better color diagram, so I'm just going to have to kind of eyeball it. My big long arrows, I am going to stagger on either side of the launch lug, and they basically go all the way up to the nose. You only really get one good crack at this, so do your best to get it all straightly lined up. I actually want it a little farther up than that. I want to get it pretty much right up to the nose cone, I think. Well, too far. Yeah, like I said, you only get one shot at this. Well, apparently I get three. I didn't really get much of the sticker on, so it should hold pretty well. That looks pretty good. And it's not very straight. Yeah. Well, I'm probably kind of running into the lifespan of, whoops, how often I can stick this sticker on at this point. But, you know, it's not the end of the world if you don't get it quite right the first try. It's also not the end of the world if you never get it really quite right. It's just a rocket after all. We want it to look good, but we do the best we can. Okay, other sticker. And these are, of course, difficult to get off sometimes. It would be nice for them to be kind of starting at the same point. Well, we'll do our best, because I'm not actually going to take the time to like measure to make sure this decal goes on super accurately. I could probably go on a little closer to the nose. Maybe like that. That's probably pretty good. All right, so those are probably the most difficult ones. There are a bunch of little decals that say like Viking on it. Good luck with them. Tiny little Estes ones. These ones go on the fins. Depending on how many fins you put on, you can put them wherever you want. Obviously, you want them to fit flush like this, out here on the fins. So they go like this. Don't get them on the wrong side. And these little square guys go around the launch lug. I don't think there's a whole lot of value in me actually showing that to you, so I'm not going to waste your time. If you want, the last step after you put the decals on is to give it a clear coat with clear spray paint. For these decals, I'm not sure if I'm going to bother with that. There's another kind on more complicated Estes kits called water slides, which you, as the name implies, use water to slide them off. Those ones are incredibly thin and they're fragile. And putting that extra clear coat on protects them, makes it nicer. Plus, you can use clear, shiny paint to make it shiny if you want to. Mine's already gloss, so it wouldn't make much of a difference. I think I probably will clear coat this in the long run because the fins are made out of paper, and it would be nice to protect them in case like we're launching and it's a little damp out in the morning or something like that. But it's certainly not going to improve the quality of the rocket in any fashion, and you never know. I mean, it might not react too well with the stickers sometimes. You just want good paint. All right, so that basically takes care of this thing. This thing is good to fly. The only thing that's really worth mentioning is, remember, there's no retaining system on this at all. In order to put the motor in here and get it to stay, you're going to need to friction fit it, which means you put a little bit of tape around the motor as you're going in. So that'll hold it in a little bit, but frankly, it's probably not going to do enough. You also want to then have a little bit of tape, masking tape, between the rocket and the motor itself. It's surprising how little masking tape you actually need to hold the motor on. It's actually surprising, it really is. But it's nice because you don't actually need the friction fit to be really, really tight. Because if you have an incredibly tight friction fit with the motor, it's hard to get out. You don't want that in the long run. So the little bit of tape on the outside will go a long way. That's pretty much it. Hopefully you've had a successful build and enjoyed watching this. I will talk to you again with our next project, whatever that might be. See you later.